What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the 3&D. Once again, we are now on the Empty the Bench podcast network, so make sure you hit subscribe below right here on youtube.com/ETB network, and follow our socials at the 3&D ETB below, and follow the Empty the Benches network on at ETB network on Twitter, Instagram, all social medias. So on tonight's episode, we'll be taking a look at some huge news in the college transfer portal. The NBA draft withdrawal deadline was also passed. So we'll take a look at some of the guys who decided to stay in, some of the guys who will be going back to college, some more coach hirings. There's been a few big ones that we definitely have to touch on throughout this past week. And later we'll recap games 1 and 2 of the NBA Finals and get you guys ready for game 3, which will take place Wednesday night. So I hope everybody's doing well. This last night, hope everybody stayed up and was able to watch every bit of last night. Game 2 was absolutely insane. It was back and forth. If you guys were watching along with us on the Empty the Bench podcast network, I thank you very much. We had a great time doing the live stream, and the game was just back and forth. Went on two different runs. The Nuggets in the first half looked like they were pulling away, looked like that was going to be tough, and then the Heat started pulling away in the second half, and then came right down to the very end of it. So it was exciting. Everything you wanted to see in game 2, especially after how much of a blowout game 1 was. So first things first, we'll jump into some of the college basketball news. Tyler Burton commits to Villanova. So Tyler Burton, one of the best mid-major players in the country, he withdrew from the NBA draft, and he'll be playing at Villanova next year. He committed for his 5th year. He was a senior this past year, gets the extra year of eligibility because of COVID. And he's going to be using the 5th year to play for Villanova. Villanova has quietly had an insane offseason. They've not only landed Burton, but they also landed Hakeem Hart, who was a senior at Maryland, one of the better recruits, one of the better transfer guys out there, and TJ Bamba too, who is a junior at Washington State, so who has 2 years of eligibility left. So they're going to get Hart and Burton for their 5th years next year, and Bamba will be a true senior with an extra year of eligibility next year. So they're starting to load up a little bit. I mean, obviously, since Jay Wright retired, they had Cam Whitmore on the team this past year, but we haven't seen too many big recruits decide to, follow in Kyle Neptune's footsteps and head to Villanova. But the team was still competitive, and this is a huge addition for them. I mean, Tyler Burton is quietly has been one of the best players in the country the last couple of seasons. He averaged 19 points, 7.4 rebounds, and 1.5 steals for the Spiders this past year, playing in the A-10. Are easily one of the A-10 best players of the last couple of seasons. So I think that this was an awesome move, not only for Villanova, but I think it was great for Burton. It'll get him playing some Big East basketball for his 5th year, trying to put together an NBA resume to try to get drafted in 2024. And yeah, I think that's really the last big domino to drop. Arthur Kaluma was another guy who decided to withdraw from the NBA draft. And he entered the transfer portal as well. So there's a few interesting names of guys who decided to withdraw from the draft. The surprising ones, in my opinion, that are returning to school is Adama Sanogo decided not to. Sanogo will stay in the NBA draft. So all 3 of the big men who were supposed to be late 2nd round picks, Oscar Tshiebwe, Drew Timme, and Adama Sanogo, are all staying in the draft. Terrence Shannon Jr. decided to go back to Illinois for his 5th year. I thought he was going to stay in the draft. He was a senior when he made his first announcement too. He gave off the impression that he intended to stay in the draft. But he will be deciding to head back. Zach Edey, also the National Player of the Year this past year, he'll head back to Purdue for his senior season. Obviously he had an insane year. He wasn't too much of an NBA draft prospect this year. I think he's got some work to do before he can be next year. And then Deron Holmes from Dayton, sophomore from Dayton. I think that, he's he was one of the quiet guys that he was one of the quiet guys that I thought was going to be a second round talent. But he's going to head back to Dayton for his junior year. Tristan De Silva too, Colorado junior from Colorado, will also be heading back. Along with those, some other names that the big college basketball fans know of: Elijah Martin, who's on a Florida Atlantic; Janelle Davis, also on Florida Atlantic. Joe Girard is going to be transferring from Syracuse to Clemson. So those are all guys to look out for that are going to be headed back to school and will not be staying in the NBA draft. And as for the guys who will be staying in the draft, Andre Jackson was an interesting one. Andre Jackson, the forward from UConn, he was on the starting 5 team for the national champions this past year. He decided to stay in the draft, and he's looking at like a mid-second round pick. Might be able to climb up a little bit later on. Jordan Walsh was another one too. I found was interesting. He was a 5-star recruit, one of the 3 5-star recruits that Arkansas had this year. And the other 2, Anthony Black and Nick Smith, are going to be first-round picks. He's more of a second-round pick, possibly undrafted, mainly because he's a little bit raw when it comes to the offensive end. He's a very good defensive talent, he without a doubt has already established himself as one of the better defenders, young defenders in the nation. But I thought that probably would have been smartest for him to return to college and go that route. But he's decided to stay in. So NBA draft once again is 3 weeks from this Thursday. So once again, the 2023 NBA draft is getting closer and closer. I know most people don't care, unless you're a diehard college basketball fan, and much more college basketball fan than NBA fan. Most NBA fans do not care right now, obviously, about the NBA draft, with the NBA finals deep into their series. And most NBA fans aren't going to look at draft boards until like the week of anyway. So this is your little awareness about what's going on in the NBA draft world. Now we'll jump into the NBA world and with some front office news. The Knicks part ways with Scott Perry. So very interesting move. Perry was hired in 2017 as the Knicks GM. He took over as president of basketball operations in 2020 when Steve Mills was fired. Leon Rose, it was his general manager, and now Rose is going to be looking to find a new GM / president. Scott Perry came over from Sacramento. He's been around the NBA front offices for years. He made a lot of interesting moves, and a lot of I feel like every Knicks fan either loves some of the stuff he did, or hates a lot of the stuff that he did, because he has fingerprint on a lot of things. He has fingerprints on the Porzingis trade, David Fizdale hiring, which ended up being a train wreck. But he also signed Julius Randle, and he signed Jalen Brunson, and drafted RJ, drafted Mitchell Robinson, drafted Obi Toppin and Emmanuel Quickley. So he's had his fingerprints on everything good that the young core of the Knicks has. He also hired Tom Thibodeau as well, but also some of the things that they screwed up on over the last couple of years. I don't think the Porzingis trade was a screw up, but more so the Fizdale hiring and a few signs, maybe the Fournier signing was definitely not a great one. So he is headed out of the Knicks. Be interesting to see if he gets another front office job. Obviously, Bob Meyers' name is popping up everywhere. Golden State's GM, who just recently was let go. I think it was a mutual agreement to for them to part ways. Obviously, that name is popping up. He was president of basketball operations though for the Warriors, and Yeah, he wouldn't get anything less than that if he goes to the Knicks. So I don't know if that's a realistic candidate. There's going to be a lot of teams after him. And also, you got to wait and see if he is interested in jumping directly back into a front office role. So Knicks part ways with Scott Perry. Makes things a little bit interesting for their offseason. What will Leon Rose do to fill the gaps? All that kind of stuff. It's going to be interesting to check out for the Knicks, and kind of adds to their their offseason to-do list, which is going to be very interesting. So some jumping over some other news that broke today. Kyrie Irving wanted LeBron James to play in Dallas. So apparently, news broke today that at the trade deadline this past year, the Dallas Mavericks tried hard to trade for LeBron James, and obviously the Lakers didn't let him go. And now with Kyrie Irving is set to become a free agent, he was trying to recruit LeBron to come to Dallas so he can re-sign with Dallas and compete there with Luka, create their own big three. In that case, it's a very interesting report because LeBron's not going to Dallas. I think everybody knows that. And, who knows how true it is too that Kyrie, kind of reached out to him, and I wouldn't be surprised. And I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to orchestrate something, but knowing Kyrie is that there's no guarantee he even re-signs with Dallas. So it made it very interesting. And Dallas also isn't interested in putting up with the stupidity too. They've been pretty blunt about how they're not doing a sign and trade with Kyrie. If they're going to sign, they want to sign him back, but they're going to sign him back on their terms. And he doesn't have much leverage either to play around with all the stuff that he's been doing over the past few seasons. So does not surprise me that, a report like this came out. A report like this could come out, and then 2 days into free agency, he might end up signing with some other team and leave Dallas. So we have no idea what's even going to happen with Kyrie. He's a free agent this offseason, and, a lot of teams are very wary about his antics and are not going to put up with any of it for too long. So very interesting. And then again, LeBron James, he's coming down to the last 2 years of his contract with the Lakers. He has 1 year guaranteed, and then he has a player option for the 24-25 season. He's teasing retirement. He's teasing, playing with Bronny after Bronny enters the NBA draft after his freshman year of college. He'll be playing at USC next year, so he'll most likely be a one and done. And there's, the rumor that LeBron will opt out of his player option and go join whatever team Bronny ends up getting drafted by, and so he can end his career playing with his son. Who knows if that's even going to happen? I mean, he's already talking about retirement now, and he's getting paid a lot of money too. I don't know, for the first time in LeBron's entire career, I'm not sure I don't think a lot of teams are dying to try to trade for him. I think that he's getting paid a lot of money. He's been hurt the last couple of years. He's aging. Obviously, he's pushing 40 now. I think it's an interesting situation, but he kind of stuck with the Lakers. That's kind of the situation. Him and Anthony Davis both have 1 year left, and then a player option after this next year. And Dallas also and Lakers also have a huge offseason ahead of them. Their entire bench is a free agent this offseason. I mean, there's literally 3 or 4 guys that they have under contract as of right now for next year. So they got to do a lot of digging, and they're going to have to completely redo the team or bring back a lot of guys anyway. So that's going to be very interesting to see, though. The Kyrie antics are always crazy. I thought that he would always stay. He was going to stay with the Nets, but then him out of nowhere getting traded to Dallas, and KD getting traded to Phoenix was really interesting. So we'll see what ends up with Kyrie. I wouldn't even be surprised if he doesn't stay with Dallas and he ends up going elsewhere. So that's the newest Kyrie news. I'm pretty sure almost every week as I do these episodes, there's going to be a new Kyrie report that comes out. It seems like a couple times a week, something's going on with him. So, the Kyrie Irving segment is going to be a very common one on the 3-and-D. So now let's check out the coaching carousel. Back to all of the moves that have been made over the past couple of weeks, over the past week or so. Obviously, last episode we had a few big time moves, but there was 3 big moves that happened this time around. And leading things off is Nick Nurse. Nurse was hired by the 76ers. Kind of a bit of a surprise. We knew that he was interviewing for them. We knew he was interviewing for the Bucks job, but the 76ers decided to hire him and to replace Doc Rivers. So Nick Nurse is 55 years old. He spent the last 5 seasons as the Toronto Raptors head coach, where he won the NBA Finals in his first season with Kawhi Leonard in the 18-19 season. And before that, he was a G League head coach and won the championship in the G League. So he's a championship-winning head coach. Did a great job in Toronto. I thought that him getting fired was a really bad move, honestly, for the Raptors. He was 227 and 163 career record with 25 and 16 in the playoffs, and then obviously won an NBA Finals. So he's going to be trying to bring that skill set to a team that desperately needs it. The Sixers need something. They're always knocking on the door and just can't get it done in the playoffs. Embiid, we'll see if Harden comes back to play with Embiid. Harden is also going to be a free agent this offseason, and what they do if they need to replace Harden too. There's a lot of people teasing Kyrie possibly being a replacement, all that kind of stuff, which would all be very interesting moves. But Joel Embiid, obviously winning the MVP and once again getting knocked out early in the playoffs. You got to wonder if the clock is ticking a little bit for the Sixers as a franchise to start making a push soon, or is Embiid going to want out, or is something else going to happen? If that happens, then we might be looking at another long rebuild for the 76ers that we saw a long time ago. So again, I think it was a really good move, because I thought that when Nurse getting fired from the Raptors was a little bit unjust and a little bit of a quick trigger in my opinion. I thought that he did a great job. I thought the team just wasn't even that talented. Honestly, the Raptors were not completely talented this season. Like, the way that they performed was kind of up to par, in my opinion, with the way that they looked. So Nick Nurse headed to the Sixers. Another big one too. The Detroit Pistons landed Monty Williams. Monty Williams, 51 years old, obviously was the Phoenix Suns head coach the last few seasons. He signs the biggest contract for a head coach in NBA history for 6 years, $78.5 million. Just absolutely crazy. Crazy money to give to a head coach, making $13 million a year as a head coach. I mean, absolutely insane. Obviously, when Monty Williams was let go by the Suns, they still owe him $21 million too. So he's basically owed $100 million now from these two franchises. But he still owed $21 million from the Suns. There was the rumors that he was going to step away from basketball, spend some more time with family, and kind of take the time to reflect a little bit, and all that kind of stuff. But money talks, and if the Pistons are throwing a 6-year contract for $13 million a year to be a head coach, that's very difficult to pass up on. So 6 years, $78.5 million. Pistons got their guy, Dwayne Casey, obviously had been their coach the last few seasons. He moved into a front office role this year, and Monty Williams is going to take over as their new head coach to try to steer that young core into a winning franchise. Monty Williams also was a Hornets/Pelicans coach from 2010 to 2015, and then obviously the Suns head coach the last 4 seasons since 2019. He brought the Suns to the 2021 NBA Finals, where they lost to the Bucks, as a 367 and 336 career record, and 29-27 in the playoffs. And then the Suns have hired Frank Vogel, so another big move by a big team. It was a little bit of a surprise, to be completely honest with you, because you heard Vogel's name coming up as interviewing for a few different teams. I didn't know if anybody was realistically looking at him, and you kind of like you fire Monty Williams to hire Frank Vogel. It's something that definitely set NBA Twitter off a little bit. Kind of wondering what's going on with that. But Frank Vogel, another NBA championship head coach. He was not the problem with the Lakers. I don't think they needed a scapegoat for completely underperforming last season. And, you're not going to blame LeBron James. You're not going to blame Anthony Davis. And they're not going to blame Rob Pelinka. So obviously Frank Vogel is going to take the fall for him. But Vogel gets back on his feet after 1 year out of the league. He's 49 years old now. Was fired by the Lakers in 2022 after 3 seasons with them. He won the NBA Finals in the 2020 bubble. Before that, he was the Pacers head coach from 2011 to 2016, and he was the Orlando Magic's head coach from 2016 to 2018 for 2 seasons. So that's the rundown for Frank Vogel. 431 and 389 career record, 49-39 playoff record. So the numbers speak for themselves. He's coached some good teams. He coached the old Paul George, Roy Hibbert, Lance Stevenson Pacers back in the early 2010s that were great, but couldn't get over the hump that the Heat kind of created in the Eastern Conference. Nobody was really going to be able to beat the Heat, but he kind of got the Pacers competitive every single year, and then joins LeBron's team in 2019, and I think did a very solid job as a Lakers head coach. But Darvin Ham, I also got to give a lot of credit to. He stepped in and did a very good job this year for the Lakers, obviously bringing them from under 500 to a playoff team to a play-in team, and then making it all the way to the Western Conference Finals. So it's pretty impressive. But the Suns are going to bring in Frank Vogel. Be very interesting to see what he does. The Suns are built to win now. You got Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant as your big 3. Rumors have begun to circulate a little bit if they're going to shop Chris Paul. There's a possibility that he gets traded. What it seems like now, the more likely scenario is that Deandre Ayton gets traded. That's what they said. DeAndre Ayton was just re-signed to a long-term deal, the former first overall pick. He he's performed very up to par with what they expected that he was going to be, but he never took the next step as a dominant big, like one of the best bigs in the league. He doesn't have much of a jumper. So he's kind of like the odd man out with them. I mean, Chris Paul is the playmaker. Devin Booker is the star of the team, the star scorer, and Kevin Durant is also the star scorer. It's pretty much like the Booker and Durant is pretty much what we just saw with Kyrie and Durant, and what we saw with Steph and Durant. So basically, KD playing alongside an all-time great scorer. That's pretty much like the definition of his career since 2016, and he'll be doing that again. Obviously, joined the Suns late this past year. They couldn't make too much of a push. They, a lot of their chemistry and stuff has to be built later, like for much longer into the season. But very, very interesting. Very interesting moves. That I think will do a pretty solid job on helping these teams compete. I think the Frank Vogel move was a very good one. I didn't really expect that he was going to get hired. Monty Williams was a really interesting one. And if you're the Pistons, why not? You got a young team. You're trying to push them to the next level. They got a lot of young talent. They're going to have the number 5 pick again this year. So you might as well try to bring in a head coach that is experienced, has NBA Finals experience, and can try to lead them in that direction. So jumping back from NBA news, there was more news about the class of 2024 for the NBA for college basketball in the NBA draft. 2 players are joining the G League. As we said last episode, nobody big was set to join the NBA G League Ignite. For the last few seasons, we've seen like a couple of top 10 recruits joining Ignite and decide not to play in college. We got two guys deciding to do it now. Montez Buzelis, who is the number 5 ranked high school senior in ESPN, 5-star recruit, just announced that he's going to be joining G League Ignite next year. He chose Ignite over Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, Florida State, and Wake Forest. So he was getting recruited by all the big blue bloods, and he decided to go with the Ignite. And then Ron Holland, who we talked about last episode, who decommitted from Texas, he will be joining the G League as well, the G League Ignite. Obviously, he committed to Texas back when Chris Beard was still there. Chris Beard got fired during the season, is now at Ole Miss, and because of that, Holland decided to decommit from Texas, and he'll be going Ignite's way. So he decided to go with Ignite over Kentucky, USC, Gonzaga, Arizona, and Washington. Obviously, he still had offer from Texas, even though he decommitted. But since he decommitted, he wasn't going to come back. But so he pretty much chooses the G League Ignite over Kentucky, USC, and Gonzaga as the big schools, and Arizona. So this makes things really interesting. This puts these two guys are supposed to be lottery picks next year, early 2024 mock drafts. You can check out, have them go in lottery. And now they join London Johnson, who is another projected first-round pick of next year's draft, who plays for the NBA G League Ignite. So London Johnson and Montez Buzelis and Ron Holland all joining the G League next year. It's going to be exciting. I'm excited to watch the Ignite play. Obviously, over the last couple of years, they've had a handful of good high school prospects that decide not to go pro. Scoot Henderson, obviously this year leading the way, and Leonard Miller, and before that, Jaden Hardy and Jalen Green and Dyson Daniels and all the rest of them. So be very interesting to see. It's going to be another fun one for Ignite. They're going to have a couple of guys who are supposed to be top draft picks playing for them again. And as for some more coaching carousel, not really head coaching stuff, but assistant coaching stuff, a couple of names got thrown out today. Sam Cassell will be joining Joe Mazzulla's staff on the Boston Celtics. Cassell was up for a couple of jobs and didn't end up landing any of them. He has been an assistant over the last several years for a few different teams, and he'll be joining Mazzulla on the Celtics. Terry Stotts will also be joining Nick Nurse on the Milwaukee Bucks. He'll be joining Nick Nurse's staff. Obviously, Stotts was longtime Portland Trail Blazers head coach. He was head coach up until 2 years ago when they decided to hire Chauncey Billups instead. But he was there for about 8 years, led them to a Western Conference final. He was a very good head coach, very, very solid head coach, and he's going to be joining the Milwaukee Bucks on their staff. So it's going to be exciting stuff. There's a lot of movement in the coaching world. I'm very, very, very excited to see some of these new head coaches and the kind of impact that they're going to have on their teams. And the main one I gotta say though that I'm most looking forward to, I think, is the Monty Williams trade. The Monty Williams hiring, because I think that could end up being huge. The Pistons are a good young team. I'm excited for them. I'm excited to start seeing them compete, and that's definitely going to be exciting to check that out. So there's a few more coaching moves, and now without any further ado, get to the best part of the show. The NBA Finals series tied 1-1 now. What a game last night. An absolutely incredible game. Obviously in game one, the Nuggets kind of blew out the Heat, but last night the Heat ended up winning 111-108. A great game by Jimmy Butler, had 21 points and 9 assists. Bam Adebayo, 21 points, 9 rebounds. Another big game from Gabe Vincent, who is one of the unsung heroes of this entire playoffs. There's no doubt about it. Where would it will be interesting to see where this Heat team would be without Gabe Vincent and Max Strus and all these guys who have stepped up for them. Max Strus also had a very solid game as well. But Gabe Vincent ended up playing great. He had 23 points and hit some big threes. Max Strus as well hit a few big shots. So it was an all-around good game. It was all around very solid game for Miami, and Jimmy Butler kind of led the way, obviously, and Bam Adebayo. What did it? I thought that Adebayo did a great job of guarding Jokic throughout the majority of the game. I mean, it wasn't Jokic ended up having a tremendous game regardless, but just watching him, I thought Adebayo did a good job of containing him for the majority of it. They limited him to 4 assists too, and obviously most people have probably seen the Spoelstra comment, Evermona Shelburne after the game, basically her asking, if their goal was to turn Jokic into a scorer and not a passer, whatever that was supposed to mean. Spoelstra kind of just fought back and just said, like, he's a great player. You're just trying to contain him, do whatever you can with him, which I thought was very, very interesting response. But he did a good job. Adebayo did a great job, and he also had 21 points and 9 rebounds. He was 8 for 14 from the field, 5 for 5 from the free throw line. Only had 4 fouls too. He didn't get into foul trouble too quickly, which we had been seeing. Especially on those illegal screens, he's been setting a lot of illegal screens throughout the entire playoffs. Watching that entire Knicks series, I think every Knicks fan was driven crazy by the amount of illegal screens that he was setting. But anyway, doesn't matter. Weren't called. Not going to go down in the books. Nobody's going to remember that. So Duncan Robinson also had a solid game. Played 17 minutes off the bench. He had 10 points, was 2 for 3 from downtown. Kyle Lowry had a decent game off the bench with 9 points and 3 assists. And Gabe Vincent, as we said before, 23 points. He also had 3 assists, was 4 for 6 from downtown. Max Strus ended up with 14 points, and 12 of those, I believe, came in the first quarter. He started off red hot from 3 to start the game, but ended up going 4 for 10 from downtown, which is still 40%, still a great average, but he started off hot and then couldn't get some to go. So he ended up having 14 points and 6 boards. Kevin Love also rejoining the starting 5. They kicked Caleb Martin off to the bench. They decided to stick Love back in there, and he had 6 points and 10 rebounds while shooting 2 for 9 from the field and 2 for 6 from 3. So he didn't have too much of an impact on the offensive end, but his veteran leadership too was definitely noticed and is a big part of what's making Miami so dominant. And that's exactly what they wanted. They wanted to change it up a little bit. It didn't work in game 1, starting Caleb Martin. Caleb Martin still had a decent game off the bench, playing 21 minutes, but Kevin Love being in that starting rotation, like he was in the entire Knicks series, I think is a key for them to, keep the pressure on the Nuggets too. And, when they start too small of a lineup, it's difficult starting Vincent, Strus, Butler, and Martin because, you're going up against Jokic, you're going up against Gordon, you're going up against a 6'10" Michael Porter Jr. Like, you're going up with guys with legitimate size, 3 guys who have center size pretty much. And so it's difficult to run small ball when you're doing that. So I think Kevin Love jumping back into the starting lineup was pretty important for them. And, his veteran leadership was definitely not overlooked. And then on the Nuggets side, obviously 41 points and 11 rebounds from Nikola Jokic. Another incredible game, was 16 for 28 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3. He only had 4 assists though. And a lot of people started talking about that. Obviously, we've grown accustomed to his triple doubles, so only seeing 4 assists was a little bit of an interesting one. But he still had 41 points, still had 11 rebounds. He was the heart and soul of the team. Jamal Murray also had a decent game. He had 18 points and 10 assists. He was more of the facilitator throughout. He was 3 for 8 from 3. He hits 2 or 3 big threes, though. He ended up making 3 threes the entire game, and 2 or 3 of them were big time shots to try to get them back into the game. So Jamal Murray ended up having a really good game. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope too ended up having a great game on the defensive end. He only had 6.3 rebounds, 3 assists. He didn't really do much on the stat sheet. He ended up fouling out as well, but I thought that his defense and his slashing ability was very solid throughout the entire game. And then Michael Porter Jr. was kind of nowhere to be seen. 5.6 rebounds, shot 2 for 8 from the field. He did not do much. And Aaron Gordon, too, had a little bit of a quiet game. He was 2 for 2 from 3, but 12.7 rebounds. They're really, outside of Jokic, there really wasn't too much production from the Denver Nuggets. Jamal Murray didn't step up the way that he had stepped up in previous games, even though he did hit a few big shots. But the majority of the offense was going through Jokic. I mean, he had 41 points. When he wasn't on the floor, they went on that little run too in the second quarter, which made things interesting. But they're going to need the Nuggets are a very deep team, and one of the reasons why they've made it this far is because of their depth, and they're definitely going to need bigger performances from some of their other players if they want to steal one in Miami. This is a brand new series now, people. The series is tied 1-1, and we're headed back to Miami. Everybody who was saying, "Oh, the Nuggets are going to blow them away," after watching Game 1, the Heat aren't going to be able to compete with them. Blah blah blah. Couldn't be further from the truth. That was a huge win by Miami. They bring all of the momentum back to Miami too, and they are a tough team at home as well. You have to remember that. Miami was significantly under 500 on the road this season. 7 games under 500, and they were 6 games. They finished 6 games over 500. So that just goes to show you their dynamic ability at home, how they've been running the playoffs throughout every series that they've had, how they've been doing a great job capitalizing on home court advantage. And, it's going to be a tall task for the Nuggets. Got to go in there and you got to try to win one of the two. That's the biggest goal. And then bring the series back to Denver, bring home court advantage back to Denver with the series tied 2-2 for Game 5. That's what the Nuggets got to look at, because it's going to be a really, really tough task to win both games in Miami. And that was tough. It was definitely a tough one to lose yesterday. So once again, this is the road to a potential Game 6 or Game 7. I think at the very least we're going to get a Game 6. We could very well get a Game 7. That's how close this series is going to be. My Nuggets in 7 still stands, but we're going to find things. We'll find things out. Wednesday night will be very interesting too, to see how the Heat come out and play, see how the Nuggets come out and play too. I mean, the Nuggets were also one of the best teams at home this year too. So them losing that game was pretty incredible. I mean, the Nuggets were 34-7 this year at home. So that was a huge win by Miami. And once again, I think if the Nuggets can split with Miami in this series, in Miami, if they can split with them and go back to home court advantage with 2-2, then I think they're sitting pretty well to win it all. But they have to make sure they don't lose these 2 games. I mean, obviously falling down 3-1 is the worst thing you can do in the NBA Finals. Only one team has ever come back from that. There's been very few teams that have ever come back from 3-1 in any round of the playoffs. No team has ever come back from 3-0, but that won't happen. I mean, with the series tied 1-1, but this series, both teams got to make sure. I mean, Miami, you love home court. You got to be trying to win both these games. And if you're the Heat, you're trying to put them away early, because you're trying to go back to Denver with a 3-1 lead. And only one team in NBA history ever coming back from a 3-1 lead in the NBA Finals. So much fun. Last night's game was great. I'm excited, very excited to check out what Game 3 has in store Wednesday night, and we're going to have plenty of good content here on the 3&D and on the Empty the Bench network throughout the rest of the NBA Finals, and we'll be excited and we'll be very excited for it. So that's going to do it for tonight's episode. For tonight's episode of the 3&D, I want to thank everyone for tuning into the Empty the Bench podcast network for our second episode. Obviously, many episodes in the past, but we got our second episode underway here on Empty the Bench. Once again, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/ETB network. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the 3&D ETB, and follow the entire network as well at ETB Network. We'll be putting out content all week, as we always do, clips and various opinions. In case you missed this entire episode, clips will be going up all week, so make sure you give us a follow, give ETB a follow, give the 3&D a follow, and make sure you subscribe. You subscribe to ETB on YouTube. So hope everyone has a great night and enjoy some NBA Finals the rest of this week and into the weekend. And we'll be back for episode 3 next week. Thanks, everybody.